Namaste. I hope you are all doing well and are keeping safe. Welcome to the Festival of Bharat. My name is Pujita Krishnan. As you all know, we are committed to bringing you content that is dharmic in intent, spirit, and enriching. Our aim is to keep the torch of Sanatana Dharma blazing high and proud. I'm personally delighted to have on the show today someone I have been following diligently for many years and his extremely popular show on YouTube called Jaipur Dialogues. It is, and he is, a pioneer in many ways in bringing content that is important in shifting perceptions and narratives on our Dharmic civilization and its values. Please join me in welcoming Sanjay Dixit ji. He is a familiar face on the internet and needs no introduction. Also, our heartiest congratulations to him on reaching 6 lakh subscribers on his very popular show, the Jaipur Dialogues. He is a senior retired IAS officer and a marine engineer. He's the author of several books, most notable among them being the book Unbreaking India and his translation, a phenomenal work, translation of the Patwai Alamgiri into English and Hindi. So, Namaste Sanjay ji, it's a great honor. And
Namaste Pujita ji, wonderful being here.
Delighted to have you on Festival of Bharat. My very first question is obviously going to be about your about Jaipur Dialogues and how the journey started, because for a lot of us, many of us who are who avidly watch your show, it's a pioneer of sorts, and I think it kind of filled a vacuum when there was none to come out with content which was Indic centric. So can you talk a little bit about Jaipur Dialogues, how it all started? What was the tipping point or the trigger for you?
Well, the Jaipur Dialogues has an interesting story how it started, because initially it started as an offline venture. It started with a few visits to what used to be the so-called iconic Jaipur Literature Festival.
Right.
And I went there a couple of times. I felt quite uncomfortable because I found that the content and the entire attitude towards Indic matters was very arrogant and disdainful. And therefore, just came to my mind that these people, they tom their history and they say that we started with 10 people. So why don't we start something like this? And that's how. And then I had a tiff with William Dalrymple online.
William Dalrymple, yes.
Yeah, in 2016 when he was making fun of Melania, Trump's wife. And
yes, I believe she was invited to the Jaipur festival.
No, he put up her nude pictures or something, and then I took him on. That on the one side you say all kind of great things about literature and about the higher values, and here you are indulging in this kind of a cheap show. And but otherwise also I didn't like that format at all, and so we started with a very small gathering of 7 outstation people. In 2016, it was an offline venture, though of course it was also relayed, but we were not really into online at that point in time. And then we had these shows. By 2019, we had graduated to about 30-40 people from 6 or 7. But it was still mainly offline, and only the recordings of those sessions used to go online. So if you go to Jaipur Dialogues, probably you will see the created by what show 2016. That's the time it was actually created, but nothing serious happened on it till about 2020 or rather late 2019.
COVID, I think COVID gave you the thrust.
Then 2020, we got encouraged by a small recorded video that I did with Tariq Fateh.
Okay.
And then came COVID. When COVID came, then it was actually, today is what? Today is 16th May.
16th May 2022.
So it was on 28th May 2020 that I did my first live show.
Oh, so exactly 2 years.
That was on Savarkar Jayanti. So it's going to be about 2 years.
2 years.
But as soon as we started doing our live shows, it suddenly took off. I mean, even we were not able to figure out as to why it was happening. But it simply took off, and we haven't looked back ever since. The only thing that we've done is that we have now stabilized our programming to about 3 videos a day, and those are done on 5 days a week. We do live shows, and 2 days we do recorded things or shorts and things of those kinds, just to add a bit of variety. But this is how it started, and I think we have to thank, I should say, the latent thirst that was there among our audience, our Indic audience, that is actually responsible for this tremendous growth. Also because that we are not actually a news channel. We are into views, and views channel typically have a difficult time competing even with the news channels. And we do a range of issues. And the second thing is that we do dialogues. So I also added on a lot of demand, because people thought that I wasn't only an anchor and that I could speak for myself. So a lot of people demanded that I do solo shows as well. So I started doing solo shows, and they've also taken off quite a lot. So that's the mix these days, that I do: one solo, two recorded, one solo, two dialogues during my live shows. And of course, then there are recorded shows and shorts and things like that. So mix it up a little bit so that it suits everybody's palate.
True.
And of course, we are also, I should say, acclaimed.
Acclaimed, okay.
By people.
Yes.
If I'm not sounding too immodest, our range, because our range of issues that we touch. That range of issues we touch from electoral politics to
absolutely
what is called hard-boiled Indic issues,
true,
including Vedas and Vedantas and Darshanas and things. That also, I think, sets us apart a little bit. Yes.
Absolutely, Sanjay ji. I mean, you said, no, you are acclaimed because you yourself are a very informed person. So it's like it's not like you're merely an anchor and you're calling people on the show and talking to them. So that comes through in, I think personally I can speak for myself, and I know a lot of people who watch your show. One comes away enlightened and informed about a lot of things that they may not have been that informed earlier. So definitely kudos to you and the whole team of Jaipur Dialogues.
Thank you.
Your work on Fatwa Alamgiri, which is quite, it's broken new ground. But my question is, why did you choose this particular text? I know there's a story behind it, or I think there is some context to it.
There is a context. There's a definite context, and that is, of course, our Hazrat Owaisi, whom I
of course,
to call
from my
Hazrat Owaisi. Once you remember that I think it was on a live show on the Earth, the Earth event of this Z Media, and I think it was J. Sai Deepak who asked him, rightly so, as to why everything, all their scriptures, everything were foreign based. And he very loftily replied, no, not at all. We have Fatwa Alamgiri. Of course, I had known about Fatwa Alamgiri quite a lot. I had known about Fatwa Razviya also, because these are two seminal books which are followed by the Hanafi sect, and particularly the Barelvi sect, because they regard Aurangzeb as their wali. Wali is the friend of Allah. So he is regarded as a wali, and the tyrant, of course, they love tyrants, and so they regard him as a wali. And Then the founder of the Barelvi sect, he had his own Fatawa Razviya, in which he had what is called the commandments of hatred, or Nafrat ke ahkamat.
Commandments of hatred.
Hatred. Nafrat ke ahkamat.
Wow.
Nafrat ke ahkam also you can call it. In Urdu, this is a funny thing, they have double plurals. So hukum, ahkam, and ahkam's plural is ahkamat. So double plural. That's a funny thing with these Arabic, Persian, Urdu languages. That's a quirk in their grammar. So Nafrat ke ahkamat was extensively surveyed by Arun Shori. So if you read his World of Fatwas, the World of Fatwas, there he refers to these Nafrat ke ahkamat quite extensively. Now, I have also got hold of the Fatawa Razviya. I've been now trying to, but it takes, actually these texts are so voluminous, and the people who are willing to work on them on our behalf are so few.
Correct.
That it's a very, very difficult exercise, because obviously, for very obvious reasons, Muslims won't work for us, because they think that we are trying to undermine their scriptures. So they don't work for us. So we either have to get some people who know Persian, Arabic, and all of these. It's not enough that you know the Urdu language. You have to have a knowledge of the Persian and Arabic also to get the context. Otherwise, you can't translate it correctly. Then you translate it like the Western world translates our Vedas. So the Sheldon Pollock-like translations or Audrey Truschke-like translations. So that's not what I'm looking for, because I need to know the entire context before I have it translated. So there are no Hindus or Christians or Zoroastrians who know all the three languages. I doubt if there is any left. Though I think at the turn of the 19th century, or even at the time of independence, I think we had a lot of them. But later on, because of the history of partition, I think the Persian, Arabic, and other things, they just got relegated, and somehow, because of this insistence of the Muslims to treat them as their holy language. Urdu, just imagine, Urdu, just born in the brothels of Delhi, that has become the holy language of the for the Ashraf Mullah Maulana class. And they were the ones who actually imposed it to Pakistan. That resulted in its Pakistan's vivisection. Correct. And they imposed it on Kashmir. Kashmir, I had done a survey. I don't know whether you read my book, Unbreaking India.
Unbreaking India, I still have to.
Yeah, so we found that the number of people who spoke Urdu in Kashmir was less than 1%.
Correct.
And about 60% people spoke either Kashmiri or Dogri. And another 20-25% spoke Hindi. And a fair amount spoke Punjabi. But then the language was Urdu. The lingua franca for the ruling elite of Kashmir was exactly like the Pakistani elite was Urdu. So the Urdu's identification with the Muslim religion actually became its bane, because it was completely given up by all other sections of India. And it was, in fact, it's been given up by most Muslims as well. People don't realize that. That's only about 10% Muslims who probably know Urdu.
Yeah.
I know better than them. I can read and write Urdu better than most Muslims. Because of this nonsense spouted by Hazrat Owaisi. I call him Hazrat Owaisi.
Hazrat Owaisi.
Because of this nonsense spouted by Hazrat Owaisi, and because I had a background in these fatwa, I know what they contain. I said, okay, let's fix this guy. Let's translate this. I had been earlier looking for its translations, and I found that Fatawa Alamgiri, which is, I have also done law. So when I was doing Mohammedan law, and I came across this, that, okay, most of the Mohammedan law that we have today is based on Fatawa Alamgiri. And the wonder of wonder was that Fatawa Alamgiri has some 73 books.
73 parts to it? Or
73 books, which are spread over 10 volumes. So
my God.
Each volume has about 5 to 10 books.
So is it a book of rules like a hadith, or what is it? Is it like a
Yes, it is. It is
do's and don'ts kind of a-
basically expounding the Mohammedan law. It is something like Hidayah, if you know Hidayah. So Hidayah, Marginani codified it in 12th century. So it was the codification on the lines of Hidayah for the Sunni Hanfis, basically.
Okay, Sunni for the Sunnis.
Sunnis are four sects, basically. In India, this sect is that dominates among Sunni is the Hanfi. It's about 99% of the Sunnis. 99% Sunnis in India are Hanfis.
What again, Sanjay? What again? 99%?
Are Hanfis.
Hanifis.
Hanafi, Hana.
Hanifi, yes, Hanifi, yes.
I think most people, those English-speaking people, or the anglicized Indians call it Hanafi. It's not Hanafi, it's Hanafi.
Hanifi, okay. But Ovaisis are, I think, like for example, the Qutub Shahis were Shias, right? The Ovaisis are the
Nizams or not. Nizams or Sunnis.
They are Sunni. Nizams or Sunnis, okay.
This is a great confusion about Hazrat Owaisi, that he's a Shia. That is because, there's a fair amount of Shia electorate in Hyderabad. So he has to keep them appeased. So every time somebody says you're a Shia, he keeps quiet. He doesn't say yes or no.
He doesn't deny.
He doesn't deny. It doesn't say yes also.
Oh.
I had to actually conduct a research and find out what kind of namaz posture he was adopting at the beginning of a namaz. So that's the giveaway. So because people don't know that Shia namaz and Sunni namaz is different. And
what's the difference?
Not only that, the namaz is different, their kalma is different, their azan is different, everything is different. So because I had an argument with of all people with this certain true Indology people, you know that?
True Indology, yeah, of course, Twitter, big.
So this guy, he thinks he's the big dada of all knowledge. Indic matters and all knowledge. So he got into an argument with me that no, he's a Shia. I said, no, he's a Sunni, damn it. Then I actually made fun of them, and then I asked him whether he knows any difference between Shia namaz and Sunni namaz. Of course, they don't know. Most of their knowledge is copy-paste knowledge. It's not deep knowledge. So copying, pasting, copying from books and scriptures and pasting is a different matter. And going deep and understanding is a different matter.
Absolutely.
So they lost the debate. They abused me. And one of their divas has been upset with me ever since. And some of the other people have been upset with me because I exposed them. Anyway. Actually, they exposed themselves. I wasn't into a fight. I was just trying to correct them. He started abusing. I just said
that's very uncivil, and I think that sometimes Twitter does descend into that kind of uncivil behavior.
All I said was he was mentioning somewhere that he's a Shia something. I just quote tweeted and said, he's not a Shia. He's a Sunni Barelvi, a Sufi Barelvi. So he got down to abusing me. So then I had to expose. And then when I showed the posture and said, find out from your friends who adopts this posture. Then all of them, they just blocked me and ran away, this, here, there, everywhere. So basic thing is that somebody is saying that our book is Fatawa Alamgiri. Is he going to be a Sunni or is he going to be a Shia? That's a giveaway.
Right.
Fatawa Alamgiri is a Sunni book.
Sunni
text. So it's a very tedious task. I have only got about 10 books translated so far. That's been
out of 72.
Out of 73. 72 is one more than the number of Huris. So 72. Huris plus one.
Correct.
That's the number.
Seems to be a magical number with it.
This is one more than the Huris. So that's 73 books. I've got about 10 of them translated so far and put them online. I think it's going to be a Herculean task. It will take a few years. It's been 1 year And this is only what, because very difficult, as I said, very difficult to get people to translate them. But basically, to expose this hypocrisy that they have something very much Indian. Of course, we know how Indian Aurangzeb was. And the people who were translating the text were also all who reveled and prided themselves in their foreign origin. The person, what's his name, that Burhanpuri guy, Nizam Burhanpuri, who was supposed to be very elderly man. But most of the heavy lifting was done by this guy called Shah Abdul Rahim.
Under the Nizam?
Under Aurangzeb. Shah Abdul Rahim. Nizam Burhanpuri was the main person. Head of the project was Nizam Burhanpuri.
Okay.
And the second in command was Shah Abdul Rahim, father of Shah Waliullah.
Okay.
If you know the history of all these people. So Shah Waliullah, then after that Shah Abdul Aziz to what is called Shah Ismail and Sayyid Ahmad Barelvi. This later on, then there was a dispute, and then they divided into Deobandi and Barelvi.
Yeah, that I'm a little fuzzy on Deobandi and Barelvi. I know you've tackled this on your show, Sanjay ji, but maybe at some point today you could talk about Deobandis and Barelvis also and kind of clarify the difference.
Yeah, I mean, the difference occurred in 1825. In the 1825, this nephew of Shah Abdul Aziz, called Shah Ismail, who was also the disciple of the Sayyid Ahmad Barelvi, the guy who got killed in Balakot in a battle with Maharaja Ranjit Singh's forces. That guy. You remember that Balakot story? At that time,
Balakot story, battle, not
the battle of the original battle of Balakot, not the one that
Ranjit Singh's that battle, the one that he
1825, this fellow, he migrated to northwestern provinces, NWFP, to wage jihad against Maharaja Ranjit Singh. And he was blessed by these people. The Shah Abdul Ismail, he was very much under the influence of the Wahhabis. Both of these people had been to Mecca and they were under the Wahhabi influence. And then this ideological battle started. In 1925, he wrote a book, a small booklet actually. It's called Taqwa ul Iman, 1825. And that raised questions over certain aspects of Prophet Muhammad as the mainstream Indian clergy, the Indian Muslim clergy, was having the ideology about him. Because the basic ideology that a lot of people over here were that they accorded divinity, because most of the Islam here was the Sufi strain. And of course, I think about Sufis we'll talk some other time. But of course, I have a chapter in Unbreaking India on the hypocrisy of the Sufi, the hoax of peaceful Sufis. So there are three differences basically. The Deobandis treated him as a great man or the perfect man, called him Insan-e-Kamil. Whereas the Barelvis treat him as a divine gift of Allah. Not human, divine. So we call him Nurullah. The Nur of Allah, the light of Allah. So they grant him status of divinity. And they also accord him certain divine qualities, things like what they call ilm ghayab. I mean, he knows everything, future, past, which is hidden from others. So those kind of things were disputed by the Deobandis, and that is where the schism occurred. And then later
That's
on
the basic point of difference between Deobandis and Barelvis.
yes, the status of Prophet Muhammad. That is why Deobandis oppose these mazars and things. And so Deobandis, they had their own line. They established it in the 50s. Those three Maulanas, Maulana Nanotvi, Gangohi, and this Ashraf Ali Thanvi. Bahishti J were fame. And later on, early 20th century, I think 1905 or 1904, as Ahmad Raza Barelvi, they established what I call the Federation of Sufis.
Okay.
The Barelvi sect is basically federation of all Sufi tariqas and silsilas. You know, the tariqa is the larger sect and the silsila is the subsect. So all except one, all except that what is called the Sheikh Ahmad Sarindi's Mujaddidi silsila of the Naqshbandi. If you leave that aside, everybody else is under the umbrella of the Barelvis. They form about 80% of the Sunni Hanafi class in India. So that's why it was very important to translate it and bring it before everyone to show them what it actually preaches. And people are actually enjoying it. Some of it reads like pornography too. There's a lot of people who have interest in pornography are also reading it, especially their what is called the code of punishments. It's called Kitab al-Hudud. Kitab al-Hudud is very entertaining. A lot of people who have those who have entertaining in the sense that it is very explicit. So it reads like old style pornography book without illustrations. So, and of course you have what is called the Kitab al-Sar, which talks about the relations between the Muslims and non-Muslims. So that makes everything clear. Anybody who reads it will.
Anyone in any state of doubt.
Anyone in any state of doubt. And I have translated it straight into Hindi. Actually, I should say that it is it's not fully Hindi yet. It's only in the transitional stage in the sense because it is still heavily Persianized. So I'm getting it translated into easier Hindi. Easy Hindi. That's also almost 70% complete. But very tough job. Very tough job. Very tough job. First, the toughest job is to find the translators with that kind of a capacity. Thanks to the ex-Muslim movement, I am now getting
You're getting people, right?
Getting people to do.
I was just going to say, in fact, only yesterday I was watching this show of Deen-e-Murdat or something that happened. Am I pronouncing it correctly? Deen-e-Murdat or something, which was a show which was organized by one of the journalists in Hindi. I think he had three ex-Muslims. Murtad, yes. And he had the Maulana, he had Rahmani and a couple of three other so-called Muslim experts. And
India TV.
Yes, in India.
Did a pretty bad job of it, actually.
He was, of course, I don't think he was competent in handling the rush of protests that were coming in from all directions.
No, because he didn't have any knowledge of the things himself. No? That's why he couldn't handle it.
So he was more like reduced to the role of being merely a kind of an arbiter. But it was entertaining.
Because first of all, he called people who were not competent. You see, the basic rule in Islam is that it is called taqleed. Taqleed in the sense that the religion can be expounded only by the people who are qualified to do it. So the basic qualification for doing that, you have to be a mufti. So a mufti is a very high qualification. So the kind of people that he invited were all ordinary people. They were simply not competent. Only one guy had done a Maulana course. And you could see the difference that he was probably the
only moderate, slightly moderate also, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, he knew what the other people were saying. Other people were highly qualified. The Deen-e-Murtad people were highly qualified. because they had been through all this. They have done their research. They are
Correct.
well read.
Yes.
They're very well grounded, and because they know what they're taking on, so their study is very, very deep. Whereas this Rahmani, of course, he's neither here nor there. He just bullshits. I think the best way to tackle him is like Arnab Goswami does. That the day you get 200 votes in the parliamentary elections, then you talk to me. Apparently, he fought a parliamentary election and got 80 votes, 80.
Who?
Taslim Rahmani.
Rahmani? Oh my God. That's funny.
So, when he's not able to counter, so the best thing they do is to shout. How do you talk about
speak
Quran?
Over the other people? Yeah.
Stand up, and that Zafar Saresh wala, another idiot. He's a Tablighi.
The one in the middle. The one in the middle.
Yes. So one guy Devbandi, the other is I thought PFI had joined you, has become Ahle Hadith, and the third guy is a Barelvi. So they had a good combination of the petting zoo, but nothing more than that. They should have got some competent Maulanas and Muftis.
So that was a very entertaining. Anyway, yeah, I was saying that.
So that's the reason that I did Fatwa Alamgiri, and it's really educating people. And anything that there's people throw, like anybody who would have read Fatwa Alamgiri and sat as a moderator would have been able to tackle these people, the petting zoo, very easily.
Very easy. Provided they listen, Sanjay ji. That's the whole problem.
No, they have to listen to the moderator. After all, they have to get the paycheck also. No? Half of these people are coming and getting insulted only because of the paycheck.
Yeah, I think sometimes I wonder what makes them appear again and again on screen.
These channels pay them, see? That's why.
Yeah, they get paid to make an appearance.
Yes. So they are ready to sell their izzat for a paycheck. Just like these Pakistanis people who come.
I don't know why they invite these Pakistanis. I don't know.
Just to humiliate them.
And
they're happy to be humiliated for a paycheck. Just imagine.
Arnab especially loves to have them on the show.
Yes,
right.
But they demand heavy price. I think they say not less than $500. They're ready to be insulted for $500. People like you and me would not agree to be insulted even for $1 million.
Absolutely. Well, so my other question is to do actually with something completely different. It had always occurred to me, or I think over the last few, recent times, there's been a lot of material that's coming out with revelations about Nehru family and Gandhiji, some very unsavory facts. Some say that Motilal Nehru was in fact not a Hindu or a Kashmiri Pandit as is believed to be. So I
think that's taking things too far.
How much of this is factual? How much of this is...
I haven't seen any corroborating evidence, so I just dismiss it out of that.
Okay, it's not necessarily true.
And that's not important either.
It's not.
It's not important because they were so thoroughly westernized, and a Hindu who gets westernized and anglicized is much worse than being a non-Hindu.
My question is though that what made them this anti-Hindu? Because even in, say, for example,
I think all of these people who are so anti-Hindu basically suffer from a deep inferiority complex, and that arises in them because of the Western lens that they have acquired, and because they look at Hinduism and Sanatan Dharma only from that Western lens, and the Westerners, especially after the initial romantics who came to India, and they were thoroughly bowled over by the depth of the Sanatana teachings. After that, then the church reaction took place, and then they started devising ways of running down Sanatana Dharma and then trying to fix them up in their worldview and trying to prove it as satanic, which they have to if their church has to succeed. All these people, they have they have had their drink only from that fountain. And that makes them completely contemptuous of our own traditions without really understanding them. In fact, I have traced it even in Nehru. I have seen that they don't even understand the very basics
He's the
of
man who wrote the Discovery of India.
that's
And
the discovery of India. So in Discovery of India, he runs down Chhatrapati Shivaji, he runs down Rana Pratap, he runs down Guru Gobind Singh. So that's the kind of guy he is. And that's because I think my assessment of Nehru, in fact, I've done a whole show, says that Blunder Boy
yes.
Nehru series. That's a series. I think 6 or 7 shows on Blunder Boy Nehru. The Blunder Boy Nehru and all these people who are steeped in the Western logic, they are not able to differentiate between the basics. They go with this, all religions are the same,
Equal.
and basically the same, not equal, but all religions are not the same, which I think one of my what is called uh, principal swan songs, which I've even written a small booklet. Here it is.
Please show us.
Yeah.
All religions are not the same.
Yeah.
Is it available online?
No, I can share the link with you because I wrote it as a series of articles. So I wrote it as a series of articles.
Okay.
It's a series of 6 articles, which is available online. It's available on medium.com. I'll share with the link with you.
Sure.
So basically, I've shown that people do not understand, even very well-read people, highly qualified people. And of course, there's a lot of difference. People also do not understand that qualification, education, and knowledge and wisdom are all different concepts. So people mistake qualification for wisdom, which is never the case. So the Indian way of looking at things, the Indian time concept, the Indian concept of logic, the Indian concept of what is called epistemology, or the system of proof, Pramana Shastra, then the Indian cosmology, the eschatology, the attitude to questioning and science, all completely different. And therefore, all religions cannot be the same. And now I'm going to expand this into a full book. That's my next project. And because I've got too busy with broadcasting that I'm not getting time to do that.
Takes away the time from your writing.
Yeah. So that is why Nehru is so vapid and so superficial, only because he never understood what Sanatana Dharma is. He was not Aurobindo. Even I think though Subhash was probably a more committed socialist, so Subhash was, but even he had a better understanding of Sanatana Dharma. And of course, he was an intelligent guy. There's no doubt about his IQ. I have a serious doubt about IQ of Nehru.
True.
And the whole problem was compounded by Gandhi because
Gandhi, exactly.
Yeah, because he had his own fancies, and most of his fancy came from the Orthodox version of Christianity.
Eastern, exactly. The whole
The Eastern Orthodox system, the Tolstoy and
influence of Tolstoy,
and also John Ruskin and Thoreau. Those are, in fact, it's there in his autobiography himself. That is where he derives all his philosophy from. Whereas he wore the garb of a Mahatma and fooled all the Indian people for the longest period of time.
So Sanjay ji, my question is, was this deliberate? Or was this just a happy coincidence that it just sort of, he played along with,
well, there are a lot of theories now going around. Now we are looking for proof. I think it might be proof that basically the British used him. That's the latest theory doing around.
And he was a stooge, like they say.
That he was a stooge of the British, because even Subhash said it is now available, that reference is now available.
Because
which says that every time he started an agitation, and he had the British on the mat. He just bailed them out.
Correct. Correct.
See, every time British were in difficulty, he was the one who bailed them out.
Hmm.
And of course, the monumental stupidity of starting a Khilafat movement, that is subjugation to a caliph sitting in Turkey
Correct.
for the whole world, when you are yourself heading an independence movement in India.
In your own, you're a slave yourself.
Yes. So yeah, that's what it was. In fact, that whole problem that arose in Malabar during that
Yes,
Malappa massacre of Hindus
the
and all
massacre of
that was because they thought that the caliphate is coming. In the caliphate, all non-Muslims have
they
a
have to go.
secondary
Yeah.
position. That's what the book says. That's there in Fatawa Alamgiri also.
Correct. Correct. Correct.
So
And
that is the whole problem. These people, that at a time when the sources of information for the public were scarce, they manipulated those sources to project themselves as Indian saints and Indian
correct.
well-wishers, and capture the minds of people and led them to their doom.
Hmm. So that's what I mean. It's for most of us. I mean, for all of us, I think my generation, my parents' generation, we were all fed on these lies about the Mahatma, and I mean, the whole world has bought the story. So
Oh yes,
I think
the
it's a
world
big
is very, very
story.
fond of Mahatma because they want you to be weak and they want you to be wishy-washy. So they prefer
Emasculate
to,
us.
yes,
Exactly.
they prefer to deal with your Mahatma image, and they can
Correct.
always, call you to account and say, well, you are going away from the Mahatma practices.
Correct. Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
so it's easy for them to,
Very convenient.
it's very convenient for them to get you to toe the line.
Correct. Sanjay ji, you're from the IAS yourself, so you'll probably be able to throw some light on this. There's been a spate of, in recent times, especially, a bunch of videos that came out of the kind of misinformation, the kind of flagrantly wrong information, anti-Hindu information that was being given out at some of these IAS coaching centers. In addition to that, there are organizations like the Zakat Foundation, which are promoting the recruitment or at least working towards the promotion of recruitment of Muslims. And there's a lot of corruption also with the recent case of this lady IAS officer who was, get her name.
Pooja Singhal.
Yes, single, yes. What is the, I mean, first of all, are these coaching centers really relevant? What kind of bureaucrats are we making? And finally, my question is, Sanjay ji, do we really need bureaucracy in this day and age?
Bureaucracy you'll need everywhere.
Well, I know.
Even if you run a small NGO, you will need a bureaucracy.
Correct.
Bureaucracy. So you just can't do without bureaucracy. The only thing is that what kind of bureaucracy you want and how you train them and how you impart certain values in them. That's what's important. This question is quite redundant, actually, whether you need a bureaucracy. Even a shopkeeper requires a bureaucracy.
No, I mean, I understand the process. I know that there needs to be a process and a channel. But my question is, it has become such an entrenched, like in India, this Babu Damka culture. Can we not do away with it entirely, or is it really necessary? I mean, in the
no, as I said, you can't do away with bureaucracy.
You can't.
So all you can do is that you can try and reform a bureaucracy. You can turn it from a bad bureaucracy to a good bureaucracy. But of course, I don't know whether all over the world, whether in America or in Britain or anywhere in the world, there is a good bureaucracy. That's my doubt, because bureaucracy by its very nature is supposed to be status quoist. It is supposed to uphold the existing political order, and that's what it is trained to do. And that it does very skillfully. The only difference in India is that it also, just like our rulers, because our rulers people like Nehru, they simply turned into brown sides. And because they turned into brown sides and they thought that they had taken over the mantle of the British Raj, they used the bureaucracy also in the same manner. So the My Baap culture continued. And that My Baap culture got so much ingrained that it is now very, very difficult to get rid of.
Mm.
So maybe you need a more drastic reform. This is a subject that I've talked about quite often, and there are a lot of videos that I've done with fellow IS officers, with others, with great doubters like Abhijit Iyer Mitra and such people. So I've done it all over the place, and I think a lot of your viewers can watch that, where I have my own ideas on how to reform the bureaucracy. And of course, I always say that cure of the headache is not in cutting off the head, but instead providing a medicine. So that's what my view about the bureaucracy is. And bureaucracy as it is being used these days, it is now being used as some kind of a hatchet arm of the political parties. Now, you can't blame the bureaucracy alone for that, because they are completely beholden to their political masters for their basic well-being. Even you might not be able to draw a salary next month if you annoy your chief minister too much. So with that kind of a sword hanging over your head, it's not really proper to tell the bureaucracy, well, you are supposed to uphold the great values and the oath to the constitution that you've taken. Well, the oath that the bureaucrats take on the constitution, they do it in the security of their rooms. They are not administered the oath of office by the chief justice or by the governor. So it's a very different nature of work that they perform. And the whole system got so much politicized that even the most idealistic of a bureaucrat gets house trained within no time. The smarter ones get house trained quickly, and the less smarter ones, or the more idealistic ones, or the more foolish ones, people like me, they take a lot of time. In fact, they never get house trained.
You must have had a lot of, you must have been at loggerheads, I'm guessing, with your political masters at
yes.
point of time.
In my last 15 years of my service, I had fights with all my chief ministers. Vasundhara Raje 1, then C.P. Joshi, then Vasundhara Raje 2, and Vasundhara Raje's
so Rajasthan was your
great man Friday, Lalit Modi.
Lalit Modi, okay.
And I never had any fights with any subordinate. Never. In my 35, 36 years of service, I never had any problem with any subordinate.
I think that in itself speaks volumes.
And I'm always running into trouble with my bureaucratic bosses and with my political bosses. So that about sums up my bureaucratic career. And by bureaucratic standards, it would be termed as quite unsuccessful, actually.
Very interesting. So I'm going to move to something that is very current today. I think the survey in the Gyanvapi mosque was concluded today. Am I right, Sanjay? I think today was the...
Yes, and my hunch is that it's only the first round.
Oh, okay. But isn't it anybody's guess that there is, I mean, everybody knows that there is a temple there, or there was a temple there. Everybody knows Kashi Vishwanath was there and that Aurangzeb destroyed it and that the priests moved. I mean, everyone knows the story. Anyway, I mean, I don't think the courts work on the basis of stories, but proof is required. So my question actually is to do with Gyanvapi Mosque is only the beginning. It has led to the, rise of, or it has led to or raked up, murmurs about other such monuments, like, for example, the Qutub Minar and Taj Mahal. I know you did a show recently on this. So are these, what do you see happening here, Sanjay ji? Is it just a few isolated cases? Initially, we thought it was only Ayodhya, and then, of course, then the protest or the demand for Kashi and Mathura, and now Qutub Minar, Taj Mahal. So, what do you think is happening here? Could you make probably, put all of this in perspective for us?
See, this whole business started, the first documentation of this was done by Sitaram Goelji. This is the book.
No, the one he talks about the Islamic invasion of Hindu temples. I think another book.
This is the volume 1. The Hindu temples, what happened to them?
What happened to them? Yes.
So this is the volume 1. The second volume is also here. This is the second volume. This is the Islamic evidence. So he proves this with Islamic evidence, and he's got a list here. He's got a list of those temples. This was the list he prepared. Here's this page 72.
Wow.
Yes. And he included only those temples on which there was firm evidence that he had collected. And this was about a list which was about 2,000 temples.
2,000 temples.
So this 2,000 temples, and then he invited Lal Krishna Advani ji to the launch of this book. By the time Ayodhya movement had already started. The Ayodhya movement had already started in a very big way. In fact, people who know Ayodhya, I was there as a child. I was in 5th standard at that time. My father was posted in Faizabad, which was the district headquarters where Ayodhya was situated. Basically, they are twin towns. You've been there. So he was posted in Faizabad. And even at that time, as a child, I was exposed to this, where the entire atmosphere, the whole environment was full of the tales of the sacrifices that Hindus did. And I think at that time they used to talk about the 86 battles that took place to liberate the temple. I think the public always knew this, especially in and around Kashi. But then this documentation was done for the first time by Sitaram Goelji when he invited Lal Krishna Advani to the launch. Very unexpectedly, he betrayed Sitaram Goelji and announced that we are ready to give up on all other claims if they give us
Ayodhya.
Ayodhya.
Oh my God.
So you can see political parties will always be political parties, howsoever much we give them credit. And then, of course, the people never accepted it. And then the slogan started that Ayodhya to bas jhanki hai, Kashi Mathura baki hai. And of course, you know how it went as far as the Ayodhya was concerned. And after Ayodhya happened, then Vishwa Hindu Parishad, of course, was at that time led by stalwart like Ashok Singhal. And right now, it's not even a shadow of that kind of a body. And I'm not sure whether it would be able to helm this kind of a movement again. But if it doesn't, then somebody else will. Because these are causes that create their own leadership.
Correct.
And because, as somebody said, I was mentioning, I just had a session before I came on to yours, this recording. One broadcaster recently said, he also comes on Jaipur Dialogues, Pradeep Singh. And he said कि कौरवों ने 5 गांव देने से मना किया था और उनको पूरा राज देना पड़ा. Then I added my own bit in a tweet कि न केवल राज्य गंवाया, जान भी गंवाई.
Correct.
So right now this situation is that kind of an inflection point. And I don't think the Ashraf Mullah Maulana, who lead the Muslims in India, they have that kind of a wisdom that they They still continue with their supremacist ideology. They still think that they can conquer India back and turn into a fortress of Islam. They still think, that's why I think this is possible. They still think that they will turn everybody into Muslim because they have to go to Jannat themselves. So they must subject everybody else to this kind of a torture because the Ashraf Mullah Malana must go to the Jannat. Everybody else may be damned. So they will not give up. Their behavior has been consistent ever since they set foot in India. And you can see that in all recorded writings of the Muslim historians. We've got a lot of these writings available. You've got translations from Eliot and Dawson into English. And if you want it in Hindi, then Sayyid Athar Abbas Rizvi has translated it in English. And that translation has got translated by the AMU itself into Hindi. Though they have now tried to disappear those books. But then there are ways that the things can reappear. So all those books have reappeared on the Internet archives. And they are available. Athar Abbas Rizvi's books in Hindi as well as in English, and Eliot and Dawson, of course, is widely available. So you can read.
What's the name again of the British or the English writer?
This is India's history.
India's history
by Indians, something like that.
Okay.
Eliot, ELLIOT, Eliot and Dawson.
Dawson. Eliot and Dawson. Okay.
Eliot and Dawson. So if you Google Eliot and Dawson, you will get this. India's history as written by its own historians. So all those accounts are available. And when I showed you this volume 2 of Sitaram Goelji's book, the Islamic evidence, so most of it comes from the Islamic authors. So that's something that their consistent behavior they cannot deny. And I have actually looked at their consistent behavior, and I written an article about the Sufis. Then I have quoted that.
Yes.
You can start their great Sufi, the Mujaddid Al-Fasani, the Ahmad Sarindi, from there to their successors, his son, his grandson, who was the mentor of Aurangzeb. That's starting from there right down to these Abdul Rahim, Shah Waliullah, all those names that I took. This Sayyid Ahmad, Iqbal, consistent. That's separatism, that exclusivism, that supremacism.
At which point does Sufi get associated with inclusivity and the kind of, because everybody just loves, whenever they talk about Islam, they talk about Sufism, and I don't know. I know you've covered this topic extensively, but I'm also curious as to how could something so something be so misunderstood, so
that's what's called propaganda. What else is propaganda? Just because they sing and dance, people think they're moderate. At least they should also try and translate what they're singing.
Just because
that they don't do.
They're twirling, they seem to be like, very liberal and very...
The whirling dervishes, just because they whirl around, they are called kafirs by the Devbandis. That doesn't mean that they do not call you as a kafir. Basically, what has happened with the Sufis, because when they started out at that time, in 10th century or so, there was a huge conflict within Islam. And that was a time when these Shariat Walas actually won that contest. And till that point, there was definitely an inclusive chapter to the Sufism. If you look at these, what people do is that they will quote Rumi and they will quote some other ancient Sufi. At that time, the Tasawwuf, as it is called, Sufism, it's called Tasawwuf. So Tasawwuf was not subordinated to Shariat.
Okay.
So it is from that time that these people, when they do propaganda, then they talk about the 10th century. But they don't tell you that in the 11th century, A guy Sufi called Al-Ghazali came, which heralded the victory for the Asharis over the Mutazallis. They used to be at that time, the rationalists. And that victory ensured that Tasawwuf was firmly subordinated to Shariat.
Sharia. Oh.
So once it has come under the Shariat, then there's the question. You're not different. That's what I ask everybody. Can a Sufi disregard Shariat?
Mm.
They will either not answer you
Mm.
or they will say yes. In either case, if they are subordinate to Shariat, then they are exactly like every other Ashraf Mullah Maulana.
Right.
If you see the history of massacres in the Indian subcontinent, all the great massacres were led by these Sufis.
Mm.
You look at the evidence I've given in Unbreaking India, that chapter I have written that all the great massacres, Malabar, that was a Qadri Sufi, this Abu Musliar, and that, what's his called, the other guy who established the Dawla, Al-Dawla. Dawla is an Islamic rule,
Okay.
Islamic kingdom.
So you're saying that
Kunj Ahmad, his name was Kunj Ahmad Haji. So Kunj Ahmad Haji and Ali Musliar, they were both Sufis, Qadri Sufis. Look at Noah Khali. What is Noah Khali? That was Nizami Chishti, Ali Sarwar, Hussain Sarwar.
Mm.
And look at all the killings that happened in Punjab. All these Sufi tariqas who were leading them. Look at the killing of the Gurus. That was Naqshbandi Chishti, this Ahmad Shah, Ahmad Sarhindi. He was the one who inspired the killings of the Gurus, of the Sikh Gurus. So all this is a complete hoax. Then look at the evidence afterwards. Who was Aurangzeb?
He also, I think, followed a Sufi.
Yes, so he followed the Naqshbandi tariqa. He was his peer murid. You know, you have this the guru disciple kind of a relationship, peer and murid. His peer was Muhammad Masoom, the son of Ahmad Shah, Sheikh Ahmad Sarindi. So Mian Masoom was his peer.
Aurangzeb's peer.
Aurangzeb's peer. Right. So he was actually initiated into the Naqshbandi Sufi Silsila. All these Abdul Rahim, Shah Waliullah, all of them followed these Sufi tariqas. So this is a complete hoax. And let not anybody be misled by these. There's only what is called, I think there's somebody made a very fine remark as a comment on one of my videos on Sufis. सूफियों में और बाकियों में फर्क इतना ये है कि वो गाना गा के आपकी गर्दन काटते हैं.
Correct. और अभी इनके गाने मतलब it's like even in the popular culture they become so qawwalis and all these Sufi songs and people are putting Rumi and so it's kind of like you said it's propaganda, it's a kind of brainwashing that happens very subtly, but I think all these myths need to be broken and busted.
Rumi was a near contemporary of Al-Ghazali, so he wasn't really following Al-Ghazali by the time. So afterwards, Al-Ghazali was then Ibn Taymiyyah came in the 13th century. So Ibn Taymiyyah, who was on the conservative side, these three strands: the conservative, the what is called the spiritual, and what is called the conservatives, the rationalists, the tahqiqis, the mutazallis, and the spirituals, the tahqiqis.
Okay.
So when the Asharis won, these conservatives, then this Al-Ghazali, who was a Sufi, he went over to their side. He actually became a great philosopher. He wrote that what is called Tahaffuz-e Falasafa. Tahaffuz-e Falasafa means that confusion of philosophy. The Tahqiqis and these rationalists, that these people used to write what they used to call Falasafa. So he made fun of Falasafa. Then there was used this Tahqiqi was there, I think, what's his name? This Spaniard.
Who was a Spaniard?
Abarouche, that Ibn Rushd. So this Ibn Rushd made fun of Al-Ghazali and wrote Tahaffuz, the confusion of confusion, basically making fun of Al-Ghazali. So you know what happened? He was given a punishment and he was made to stand every Friday in front of the mosque at Cordoba, and every namazi who went past him would spit at him, at his face.
Oh my God.
So that is the tolerant Sufi for you.
So Muslims today, or let's talk about Islam in India today. On the one hand, like we spoke earlier, there is a rise of, or at least, if not in great numbers, but at least to some extent, rising number of Muslims who are leaving the faith. Then on the other hand, other end of the spectrum, you have people, violent, aggressive, people like the ones who protested against the ban on hijab, or the ones who attacked the Hindu processions. And then again, you have people like Javed Akhtar.
It's a petting zoo. You have all kinds. Yeah.
But what do you think is happening?
You have the chirping birds in a zoo, and you also have the lions and tigers, and you also have hyenas. So it's a petting zoo. You get all kinds.
That's what you call it.
Yeah, it's not my term. It's a term devised by Christine Fair, but I'm happy to borrow it.
The American defense. She's a
yes.
Yeah. Okay. So
all these jihadi organizations in Pakistan are petting zoo.
No, but seriously, like, how much credence do you give, or what do you think of the ex-Muslims in India, or do you think there's a movement, or do you think these are isolated instances? Do you think this?
I think it has the great potential. It can, particularly if the rational people, there are very few in the Islamic communities.
Yeah.
And even if they are, nobody listens to them.
Correct.
Nobody listens to them. They have no following among the Muslims. All their following would be found among others, non-Muslims.
Correct. All the Hindus.
Yeah, I remember a session with Arif Muhammad Khan Sahab, where we were discussing all these weighty issues. And I raised the matter of taqleed with him. I said, okay, you see you say so many good things, and we all admire you for saying those things openly. And you take on these mullah malanas and all these establishment guys. But here we are sitting, and you got about 50 people sitting in front of you. Not one of them is a Muslim.
Correct.
So what's the point? What will you do about taqleed?
Correct.
Taqleed is that principle where you're supposed to not use your akal,
Yes.
or reason. You're just supposed to follow in the matter of religion only the alim. Alim means the scholar. And scholar, of course, you know what they will say. And of course, in Islam, everything is a matter of religion. Even going to loo is a matter of religion.
I remember reading in Arun Shore's book, what to do after you fast. You've gone.
Past wind. If you pass wind, then what happens?
What happens? And after you've done your business, how do you wash your hands? If you do this, then it's haram. If you do this, it's halal. I mean, it's ridiculous.
The man is under constant tension in every minute, whether he's doing the right by his religion or not.
True. So, so that was my question. Because there is a rise of ex-Muslims, for example, I think there's the Ex-Muslims Association of America in Canada, all these places. But I was wondering what really is happening in India. I mean, are these just what we see?
The Indian ex-Muslims are better than most of them. because the ex-Muslims, especially the ex-Muslim atheist movement, I think they're seriously off their rocker, because they've just given up on one dogma and embraced
Correct.
another. So
Another
they seem
dogma.
to be going the woke way.
Mm.
I don't take them very seriously, and I don't think that they are going to lead anybody much beyond some kind of a passing interest or a passing fad. But the Indian ex-Muslims are really good. I say they're really good because I think they are fortunate to be living in a place where they can have the fourth dimension, as I say, that what
Correct.
distinguishes Sanatan Dharma from the other book-based religions is the fourth dimensions of going beyond. So they are really good, and some of them are doing pioneering work. And if they continue doing this, and if they continue receiving the kind of support that they're receiving, then I think there is great hope for this movement, at least in India.
So, what about Yogi ji, Sanjay ji? What is your opinion of his bulldozer model of governance? And do you think
I have another
okay,
engagement at 6 p.m. It's already 6.
can we end with one last question on
Yeah, okay.
what do you think? I'm going to combine two questions. One is you have been critical of Modi ji quite openly as
Certain
much as
aspects.
on certain aspects. So, what would you, if I were to ask you, what would you call his biggest failures? And second tag-on question is, what do you think is the future of Sanatan Dharma? Are you a pessimist or an optimist on that score?
The last question first. I'm very much an optimist as far as Sanatan Dharma is concerned, because I think the internet has come as a big boon to us, and all the propaganda that has been flying against Sanatan Dharma can be countered by using this method. And at least in India, I'm watching the effect. And if you see all this happening, this Kashi Vishwanath movement, other movements, a lot of other things that are happening, the Bollywood collapsing, Netflix complaining and crying, and so many things that I can list out. I think that has happened because of the internet revolution and that way that we have been able to make use of it. So I'm very much a pessimist, because a spread of information helps Sanatan Dharma. If you look at the way Sanatan Dharma spread in the Far East, in the Southeast Asia and the Far East, they never carried a sword.
Correct.
And all of it is spread on the strength of its fourth dimension, the spiritual dimension. So, and who were the people who were going around? These were those Kathavachakas, those people who were narrating Ramayanas and Mahabharatas. Those are the people who were the dancing troops,
the bards,
the dancing troupes, yeah. And a lot of preachers who would be teaching the higher methods of yoga and things. Those were the people who established Hinduism far and wide, which still exists in a lot of pockets. And if you see the Japanese religion, it's basically a variation of Sanatan Dharma.
In Korean, they say Korean.
Yeah, so lots of it. So that happened because at that time, by our unique methods of communication, we were able to do it. It was suppressed very badly for about 1,000 years. But again, we have this situation where we are able to spread it. So I am greatly optimistic about the spread of the Sanatana Dharma. And especially people who are completely fed up. Like in the US, you see more than 50% are saying that spiritual but not religious. I mean, that's an anathema to Abrahamic way of looking at the world. Then you said about
the failures of what do you think are the main failures of Modi ji's?
Modi ji's weaknesses in handling the internal law and order. That I have been criticizing for ever since Shaheen Bagh.
West Bengal,
Shaheen Bagh, West Bengal, farmers' agitation, and even in Then this handling of the post 370 scenario. I wrote a full book praising the removal of 370 and enactment of CAA. But then that book has actually come to bite me back, because whatever I had hoped for in those books has not happened. In fact, only the reverse is happening. So these internal security issues, where I say that internal security issue and the cultural issues are his big failures. But he's done extremely well on the economic front in tackling COVID. Is doing quite well on the international front. So I think about 60-40 or 70-30.
70-30. 30 failure, 70 success.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Sanjay ji, for giving us your valuable time. It has been an honor and a pleasure and a very, very engaging conversation. I know that you keep very busy with your shows online round the clock, but it means a lot to us that you gave us your precious time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And until we see you again, namaste, pranam. To all our subscribers and those who are watching us, please do remember to subscribe if you haven't already. Share with your friends, like and comment, and please do come back. Namaskar.
Namaste. We hope you enjoyed this Chitti Media content. Please remember to subscribe to us and switch on the notifications for this channel. For our other social media links, more content, and to support our work, please visit citti.net. Dhanyavad. Namaskar.